Are the Texans on the move? And we have our favorite play cousin, Brandon K. Scott from Sports Radio 610 with joining us today. B, it's time to get offensive.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation! Welcome to Friday's edition of the Locked On Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. On today's show, we'll talk about, are the Texans on the move? Is it offensive to say? And once again, we have our favorite play cousin, Brandon K. Scott here, and we're going to talk about Back to the Future, which is a movie that I really liked, but I have definitely got to hear what you mean by Back to the Future, Brandon. But before we get started, today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later on in the show. Brandon K. Scott, man, look, hold on. Before you even say a word, first of all, thank you for joining us here on the Locked On Texans podcast. Look, I would say, man, I felt like I just seen you when actually I just did. Man, it's good to see anytime I get a chance to see you out covering sports in the city of Houston. And both of us got a chance to enjoy the Houston Rockets going back to the playoffs for the first time in a long time. 50-win season, them having winning the Southwest Division and currently second place in the West. Man, it was just good to celebrate with you, to see you. And look, Texans related, we got a chance to see Tank Dell walking around. He looked good. B. Scott, what's going on, man?
Man, the vibes are immaculate right now, man. We are talking to each other right now, less than 24 hours out from, like you said, watching the Rockets be able to celebrate a 50-win season, their first 50-win season in over 5 years, their first playoff appearance in exactly 5 years. We've been around for all of it, sort of living this experience together. So it's especially gratifying to watch an organization come out on the other side of it after they struggled and had to go through their growing pains and probably their own, I don't know about self-doubt, but certainly doubt from the outside. And you would imagine some self-doubt too at times. When it's not going great. And we've seen that with both organizations that we're talking about, right? The Rockets and the Texans, who we're about to get into now here on Locked On Texans, man. It is cool to see the fruits of the labor and to see the glow up after they go through the struggle and they feel like they've done it the right way. And I feel like you and I both can attest, you even more so, but we both can attest to the Rockets having that feel of having done it the right way. And I feel like the Texans are on a similar, both teams seem like they're on a similar trajectory after being in the mud, having to get it out the mud for so long. So
they the Spider-Man meme. They pointing at each other.
Exactly.
I say that all the time. The Rockets and the Texans are the exact same team, just in different professional sports. Now, B, 3 players whose future that you are concerned about, and the one I'm really interested to hear what you have to say, and I want to hear how the listeners, viewers are going to respond to this, because you got 3 people that you're concerned about, and we ain't even made it to OTAs yet. We ain't even made it to training camp yet. But B, who is the 3 people that you are concerned about as far as what, making the roster?
Well, I just feel like now, if you had to ask me to bet, all of these players that I'm about to mention are going to make the roster. Okay, so I'm not concerned about them making the roster as much. Now, I don't think it's necessarily a guarantee, but if I had to bet on it, if I were to bet on it, I'd say they're going to make the roster. But I feel like because of where they were drafted, or when they were drafted, I should say, that they're all at a bit of a crossroads, Sarge. Like we have now seen, I think, or at least know the sort of how the book has been written on the top half of that 2022 draft class. And this is what I'm getting at here. Let's, for the sake, and no disrespect, but just for the sake of the discussion, let's take Thomas Booker, Tegan Couturiano, and Austin Deculus out of this conversation and go
Super Bowl champion Thomas Booker.
Super Bowl, and who I got to see, shout out to Thomas Booker, got to talk to him that Monday before the Super Bowl. So got to chop it up with him, Dude is of course happy to see Houston doing his thing, but obviously happy to do his thing. So but definitely shout out to Super Bowl champion Thomas Booker. I'm glad you mentioned that. But let's just go with the top 6 from that draft class. Okay, we're talking about Derek Stingley, Kenyon. This is the 2022 Houston Texans draft class that I'm talking about here now.
Okay.
Derek Stingley Jr., Kenyon Green, Jalen Petrie, John Mechie, Christian Harris, and Damian Pierce. I call them the top 6 of that draft class. Really the main 6 players that were supposed to factor in one way or another in varying degrees into the Texans' future. We see what happened, right?
Yeah.
Derek Stingley just got paid. Man,
Right.
congratulations to him. Generational wealth there. Congratulations to him and the Stingley family, of course. Kenyon Green, hopefully there is a way for him to turn his career around out there in Philadelphia, and I'm rooting for the young man like none other. But obviously that did not work out here for reasons that we all saw why, right?
Good luck to him in that fresh start.
Him and that fresh start needs that fresh start, and I hope he gets it. I hope he gets it and makes the most of it, right? And then Jalen Petrie is somebody who is obviously just in between that, but firmly planted on the side of where Stingley is, because he's going to get a contract at some point and it's going to be a part of this team. So you take those top 3, and we know what their futures are with the team. Like one gone, unfortunately, didn't work out. One has been paid the highest at his position, and the other one probably going to get paid, feel like he's a useful player, obviously a leader. We can all speak for Jalen Petrie's role and status in that sort of way.
He deserves an extension.
Deserves an extension. I don't think we don't even need to argue about that. But then once we get past that to these next 3 guys, I don't really know. And look, these are all, I think, very intriguing players. Particularly in John Mechie's case, just I think somebody that you can't help but to root for.
Yeah.
But when you talk about John and Damian Pierce too, for that matter, but when you talk about John Mechie, Christian Harris, and Damian Pierce, you're talking about the ultimate mixed bag of 3 years. And to me, I've been saying this, Sarge, on the radio and on podcasts for years now, but and I feel like it's pretty obvious. But after year 3, the book tends to be somewhat written on you, at the very least with the team that you started with. Maybe your future changes one way or the other with the next team or wherever you go next. But you're on a rookie deal, you drafted, and the team that drafted you, you're on that rookie deal. After year 3, it's we kind of have an understanding, if you will, of what's going on.
Well, real quickly, do you mean but a normal 3 years, right? Because 2 of these guys that you named, well, actually, you know what? Real quickly, all 3 of these guys have not had a normal 3 years.
Right.
John Mechie had, he had to go through what he had to go through with the cancer scare, and he missed his entire rookie season. Christian Harris missed the majority of last season due to injury. And Damian Pierce is getting ready to go into his 3rd offensive system, and he's only been in the league for 4 years, right?
Right. Yeah, look, I and everything you say is true. And you and I both been standing there side by side to witness all of this, man. We preach to the choir in that way. I understand the circumstances, and I don't want to strip the context away.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you for pointing that out. But we also got to acknowledge those extenuating circumstances don't necessarily save you from time. Time don't necessarily wait for you, even if, say, life is unfair or the situation is just an anomaly or weird or odd or unfortunate, especially in Mechie's case with cancer and everything. But time still goes on. And so the timer, if you will, on, hey, well, how long do we have to wait on this to turn into what we want it to turn into? How long do we have to wait till we decide this is what it is, for lack of a better term? This guy is what he's going to be for us before it's time to make a decision on the next contract or whatever it is, right? So that's where we are with all of these guys. When I talk about Mechie, when I talk about Damian Pierce, when I talk about Christian Harris, and this is the thing, Sarge, all of them have endearing or intriguing qualities that make you say, hey, yeah, there's something there. But then also all of them have gone through some level of controversy is not the word that I'm looking for, but some level of turmoil, right? With Mechie, well, as we mentioned, it was the sickness, it was the illness, cancer. Okay. With Pierce, it's been the offensive system, and I can't point out enough on the radio whenever I'm on Sports Radio 16, and I do it on any podcast, that the system that Damian Pierce struggled in is the one that they just got rid of on purpose. And the last one, the one that we saw him in before that, he was good in.
Yes.
So like I feel like he almost needed a clean slate, but it don't work like that. You don't get a clean slate, even if maybe you should, right?
Yeah.
And then of course with Christian Harris, that's the most unique example because he's probably shown. Oh man, between Damian Pierce's rookie, y'all don't want to say that because Damian Pierce's rookie was really, really good. But Christian Harris in year 2 was kind of what Damian Pierce was in year 1, where it's like, oh, that dude could be a special type of guy at that position. They are straight when it comes to a will linebacker or just a linebacker in general, just a dude that can cover from sideline to sideline and has that swarm mentality that D'Amico Ryans talks about. He seems to fit the mold, fit the bill. Andy Alabama on top of that, like all of it just seemed to match.
Yeah.
And then you have whatever happened this past year with the injury, either him rushing back, them rushing. I don't know. I don't want to even pretend to know who's to blame for him coming back too soon. And then it not necessarily looking the way you want to look there at the end of the season. Just never looked like himself.
Yeah.
You know? And so we just got a mixed bag with all 3 of those guys. And so I'm interested to see what year 4 is going to bring for them and how we're talking about them by the end of the year.
Well, I tell you what, B, because I mean, you said a lot, and you talked about 3 of the guys that I really like in that locker room, and who I honestly and truly believe, given the opportunity to have a full healthy year, I think that they can be, somewhat very. I don't want to say somewhat. I'll just say they'll be very productive for the Houston Texans. We're about to go to the break, but when we come back, I want to talk about that just a little bit more, because one thing that I don't think that these guys are toxic, like the offensive line room was labeled. We'll be back. The Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're taking a look at our draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart. The guy we believe showcased the strength and power needed to push the Houston Texans forward as we look ahead to the next season. This week's Armada and clear-cut player of the week is none other than 6'5", 315-pound offensive tackle Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. This is a young man that is rugged and durable as they come. Even though he only played 6 games in 2024, he still garnered all Big Ten honors based off of what he was able to do on the field. He's a guy that the Houston Texans will look forward to bringing onto their team and becoming a day 1 starter, especially since the Houston Texans have a lot of needs on the offensive line, losing 3 key players this past offseason. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer. And that's exactly what I think Josh Simmons can do here. It's clear that our player of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada and any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Welcome back to the Locked On Texans podcast. We have a special guest, our play cousin. No, really though, let me be more professional we have Brandon K. Scott from Sports Radio 610 joining us today. And before we get back to the discussion about those 3 players whose future that you're concerned about and talking about the offensive line, you're a fan favorite, man, because in the comments they said, hey, when y'all gonna bring back the dude that had the dreads? And I was like, oh, he has a name. I said, it's funny you say that because he's going to be on Friday's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. And I said, he has a name, and it's Brandon K. Scott. So
Yeah.
Just know that you are a fan favorite and that you have been requested. Now, before we went to the break, we were talking about these three guys that come from the 2022 draft class for the Houston Texans. And, I'm glad that you prefaced it by saying, what you said about Stingley and what you said about Green and what you said about Petrie, so you can move them out the way. When you removed them, I knew exactly where you were going, talking about Christian Harris, talking about Damian Pierce, and talking about John Mechie. And I think that let me say this. We knew what Derek Stingley was coming out of LSU. I mean, by far was the best defensive back. As soon as he came out of high school and declared that he was going to LSU, he was the best defensive back LSU ever had. Right. And then he became the best defensive back in the country for whenever he was on the field. And when he first got here, injuries plagued him. He suffered a lot of injuries that was very unforeseen, and so you couldn't wait to see a healthy Derek Stingley on the field and what he could do. Now, the three guys that you mentioned, I'm not going to say they're of Derek Stingley's caliber when it comes to being all pro. But Christian Harris was very good at the University of Alabama, and I would like to see him have the health that Derek Stingley had so we could actually evaluate. When it comes to John Mechie, I mean, the sad part about it is it's unfortunate for him because he got hurt in the SEC game right against Georgia.
Yep.
And then as soon as that season was over for him, and then he comes into the NFL, and now he has to deal with the cancer scare. Now you're coming back a year later, trying to work all that chemo out of your body. So really, he lost his first 2 seasons, and then last season it was almost like his rookie season. You're trying to see him getting acclimated, but we knew what he could be fully healthy. Fully healthy, John Mechie probably would have went higher than what he went when the Texans drafted him. Now, Damian Pierce, right? Damian Pierce. It's funny because earlier in the week, John and I talked about the new kickoff rules where now a touchback goes to the 35 instead of coming to the 30, right? And what the NFL is trying to do is to make sure that they can get more kickoff returns and bring that excitement back. I think that's where Damian Pierce has found his niche, right? I think that's where he's found his spot. And even if he's not going to be a backup running back to Joe Mixon, and they may draft another, or they may use British Brooks, or they may use Jawar Jordan, but where he's found a spot, and I think that he could be very successful at, is on the special teams. And so, like you said earlier, I don't think that these guys will be pushed off the roster. I just think that these guys coming into their own, coming into another season of being with a DeMeco Ryans led team, I just think that they're going to be better if they stay healthy.
Yeah, and I want to be clear too on the point that I'm making as far as like the level of belief or doubt. I'm posing it as a question, as an interesting thought exercise, but I don't doubt these guys or try to put some type of limit on what they're capable of. I bring them up because I feel like they're capable of a lot, quite frankly. And like all three of them, I think they all have a lot to offer in different ways, obviously playing different positions. But that's why I'm intrigued about it. And obviously the timing of it, so it's like the time and the news value of it is just that these are contract years. They're in year 4. They're not first round picks, so there's not the 5th year option. So obviously there has been no 5th year option exercise, which means these guys are going to be free agents, barring some sort of extension. And we wouldn't expect, I don't think we would expect either one of them to get the type of extension that some of these other guys have gotten, or like, like Petrie's extension is going to be different from, I think, anything that we're talking about with these other guys. If they get one, they'll probably play the season out and more than likely and be free agents, even if they end up coming back. So what we're talking about is 3 guys who at one point seemed like they could be part of the future of this team, who are now effectively on a 1-year deal. and we're gonna figure out what does that 1 year look like. I'm intrigued to watch it because I think that there is potential in all of them. Like, think about it, man. Like Dameon Pierce, I mentioned the offense that, before they changed offenses, he looked like he could be, certainly, if not, a starting running back, he certainly looked like a viable NFL running back. So like, why he couldn't be Joe Mixon's backup this year, if the scheme suits him better or if he's more comfortable in it and what have you, I don't see why not. Christian Harris, check, speaks for itself. We saw him in 2023, and that doesn't even need to be, if you are a Texans fan, that does not need to be explained to you.
And that Cleveland Browns playoff game told you everything that you needed to know about what he could be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And even in the struggles, as impossible as it is to cover Lamar Jackson, as impossible as it is to stay with him, you can go back and watch that game, or even go back and look at some of the still photos. And you do this sometimes, Sarge, at some of the games that you attend. I know, especially some of the Astros games, but when you take some of those still photos where you can see things in a still shot that maybe you missed in live action, or that you might even still miss in a video, and you're like, man, he's that close to Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson said after their divisional playoff game that 2 years ago, Lamar Jackson said he didn't realize that Christian Harris was that fast. He said, I didn't realize that guy was as fast as he was.
Right. Exactly. So there's that. And then, of course, John Mechie is probably the one, and this is the sad part about it, is probably the one before everything, probably the one that had the highest ceiling of them all, the most potential of them all. But as you mentioned, and I don't feel like this can be reiterated enough, man, the dude, most people who try to come back from cancer or just fighting cancer and the chemo, and that's hard enough. Most people that's trying to come back from an ACL or just fighting their knee in the ACL, and that's hard enough. Most people not doing both of them two things at the same time like John Mechie did.
Yeah, for sure.
So like, I don't even know what to do with that, man, and like how that has, what the residual effect of that has been on his career and trajectory. And I don't even want to pretend to know, but I definitely feel still within me feel like there's more there than what we've seen.
I believe that as well, B.
So let's see it.
Yeah. Now, B, I'm glad that you used the number 3, because is it offensive to say that 3 players that the Houston Texans brought in during this free agency period, and that's Cam Robinson, Ed Ingram, and Trent Brown, those 3 guys, is it offensive to say that I think that the Houston Texans got it wrong? I understand them trying to build this competition type thing. I understand them trying to clean up the offensive line room and create some competition amongst the players. But B, those 3 players are it's offensive to say that?
So I'm just hoping that they know something that the rest of us don't, that the rest of the world, because think about this, man, they made these moves, and I don't know, like we've heard D'Amico talk from Florida, at the owners meetings and everything this past weekend. They're gonna say it with their chest as much as they can, but I don't know how much they tried to do and weren't able to do, how many swings they took that they missed at, like I don't know. But this is what they ended up doing. So they got to stand by it. And then the rest of us who didn't do this is looking at it and is like, I don't know about that. I don't know if I would have did that, man. So that's why I say that, to say somebody got to be wrong.
And I just want to ask you this question real quick, because I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked John. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I have to ask you this question. Are we looking at it when we're talking about the 3 players that they added in Ingram, Robinson, and Brown? Are we looking at them as, I know that they're talking about competition, but I know that they're talking about them bringing them in as competition, but is it safe to say that some of us thinks that, well, if you got rid of Laramie Tunsil, if you got rid of Kenyon Green, if you got rid of Shaq Mason, there's 3 holes that need to be filled, and now you bring in these 3 guys, and so in some people's mind, it's like, oh, so you're bringing them in to be instant starters. And so, B, is it wrong to think? Is it wrong to think that have that type of mindset of saying, well, where do you plan on playing these guys? But before you answer that, we got to take a break. Answer that when we come back after the break. Welcome back to the Locked On Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Texans your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parsons and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, B.
Man,
I did what you all like to call in the industry a teaser.
hey, look, I think they got their starting five, man, and I think that these, and I want to be clear about this, and I said this on the radio earlier in the week, but I just want to make sure I'm clear every time I say it. This ain't what I would do, okay? This ain't me co-signing. This is just me trying to read the tea leaves and make come to a conclusion based off of the information that I've been given. Okay. Yeah. And that says they went out and got Cam Robinson, who they're gonna pay $12 million this year. That is
left tackle.
That's your left tackle. That's starter money. You don't pay him $12 million to kind of say, oh, we'll see what happens with him. That's not how that works. And then I look at, and I think Brown is a larger guy. Dude is like, he could be a rim protector. He's like 6'8", 6'9", or something like that. And he's coming off of an injury. So I don't know if he's just like depth, insurance, culture. I'm not really sure I got a great read on what exactly their intentions are for him, but he is a guy who I think is just good to have in the room, good to have in the building. So I think that's more what that's about, more than just simply where he plays. But then I would look at Ingram, who you mentioned, and then Laken Tomlinson as well, the guard that they brought in. Those are guys who have struggled lately, but have started for the most part of their career.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot Laken Tomlinson. Yeah.
Yeah. Like those are guys, those aren't projects per se. Yeah. Those aren't guys who come in and say, okay, what can we get here? I mean, you might have that question, but those are guys that got a lot of tape, that have played a lot of football. And you can come in and talk about all this competition if you want, but look, I'm looking around what they got, and ain't no competition. Those the guys that's got experience and starting experience.
Over Titus, I'm not putting him over Titus though.
Well, I still feel like Titus is the wild card. I've been saying that because I don't know where Titus is going to play, but I haven't put Blake Fisher over Titus yet. Yeah. So like I still got Blake Fisher as a young player and a swing tackle until I hear otherwise, which I might be wrong about that. But I still got Titus as your right tackle.
Yeah.
So like, and maybe he does become a guard. They are strange with that. They like him at guard and to move him around. I've been saying since the beginning of time that I would just leave him at tackle, and that's what I believe he is, and I wouldn't mess with that. That's just me. But Titus Howard is my right tackle. Okay. Yeah. And then these other guys that they brought in are either starting at guard or starting at tackle, or in Trent Brown's case, is a potential depth swing tackle, but also veteran piece. Like Blake Fisher's probably their actual swing tackle, and then Trent Brown, I feel like, is the dude that's in the locker room that's kind of just keeping everybody, sort of on the all that culture stuff that people try to talk about, and don't necessarily know. But he actually fits that build. Well, so yeah, that's how I think it's gonna go, man. And do I like it? Do I love it? Do I think it's gonna work? Man, I don't see how this is better, much better.
Yeah.
But I would entertain being wrong, and maybe it is just a matter of coaching. And hey, we don't have no one guy like Laramie Tunsil who is just clearly better than everybody.
Yeah.
But we got a bunch of guys who, if we can get them playing on the string and singing the same song, then we can sound like a choir.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned swing tackles, because for those who don't really know what that means that's a player that can move either from the right side or to the left side. And speaking of moving, Texans are planning to move. Now, before you Texas fans get anxiety and think back to the Bud Adams years and think about the 5 or 6 years you were without football here in the city of Houston, I'm not talking about the Houston Texans relocating the team. I am talking about the article written by our good friend over at the Houston Chronicle, Jonathan M. Alexander, who's also a friend of the show, and you've heard him right here on the Locked On Texans podcast, had an exclusive with Kyle and Hannah McNair, where it's saying they're seeking a new location for their headquarters. And so real quickly from a couple of things from the article, he says the Texans weight rooms, their meeting rooms, cafeteria, and offices are all inside of NRG Stadium, and so they're looking to move that to a different facility, something that will include all of that and maybe a practice field. Because what Hannah McNair says, and I quote, she says, "It's disruptive. It's something we struggle with throughout the year. We don't know who is going to be there." And she's talking about NRG, whether it's a contortionist or Princess Disney on ice, whatever it is, you're constantly walking through it. We've outgrown the space. And that's because NRG Stadium, which is owned by Harris County, often hosted other events during Texan seasons when they have away games. The primary field is often unusable during the week. B, real quickly, if they're talking about looking for new headquarters that will include cafeteria, weight room, team auditorium, a recovering facility, practice field, just everything that everything that entails outside of the actual football field. If they move headquarters, does that also mean they're moving out of NRG?
I mean, it definitely feels like the first step, doesn't it? Doesn't it feel like the first step? Now, I don't think it's a definitive yes, because I think that there is more that factors into. I think it's just a lot easier for them to move their headquarters and their practice facility than it is necessarily for them to move their games. And that would also just mean that there would be a complete end to their lease agreement with NRG, or I'm sorry, with Harris County, which owns the facility. Now, I do also wonder if this is part of the negotiation. They're 7 years out from their new lease, or from what would be their new lease, or the expiration of their current lease is probably the right way to say that. 7 years out from that. Is this just a way of saying, hey, hey, look, I know we pay all this rent to y'all, but we don't really need to pay y'all that much. We're not going to even be there for practice half the time anyway. We moving our headquarters, we moving our practice facility. What's the rent for just having the games there?
And they ain't making no money off of Disney on Ice. They're not making no money off the Beyonce concert. They're not making any money off the rodeo.
None of it.
Jerry Jones is making all the money. I think
Right.
it's only, what is it? It's a lot of teams who own their own stadium and they're making the money off of it.
Right. Now, so this is the issue. They have a kind of a princess deal in the sense that they basically get NRG for the most part rent free. Like, they make more in tax rebates than they pay in rent at NRG.
Gotcha.
But the flip side of that is exactly what you said. They don't control the calendar. They don't control the activities. They got to dance around Disney on Ice or whatever else is going on at the facility. And it's just like, I think the key quote that you read there from Jonathan's piece is where Hannah McNair says we've outgrown the space.
Yeah.
And I think you can make the argument that they were always too big for the space and that they were just making it work. But this is, I think, Cal and Hannah having the foresight or the understanding, or maybe just the realization that this is just not the way it works. I've compared it on the radio to like rich people living in government housing. And to me, ain't nothing wrong with living in government housing, and ain't nothing wrung with being rich.
Yeah.
But rich people housing is nicer than government housing.
Yeah.
And so but from both sides of that, you can look at it like, if you rich, you probably don't want to live in government housing. You want to go go get rich people housing.
Yeah.
And if you live in government housing, you might look up and say, what's these rich people doing here? This for us. This for us who need it.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot probably more important things that the county could do with its money. And the rich people probably need rich people housing in the case of the Texans. And so at some point, something gonna have to give, man. I think, the short answer is if they end up moving practice facilities and headquarters, that's just the first step of, and how soon does that happen? Especially if that starts happening, if they expedite that, if that's happening in the next couple of years, start kind of looking at that timeline down the line of, hey, 7 years out, and what they talking about their next stadium location gonna be, and who gonna have to vote on it and all of that type of stuff.
Well, real quickly, before we get out of here, B, I'm gonna ask you this question real quick, and I know that you can give me a quick answer on this. Could the Harris County Sports Authority, that's who owns NRG, correct?
That's who operates it. The county itself owns it, and they operate it through the convention. They got a couple of layers: the convention authority or convention corporation or whatever it is, and then they got the sports authority.
Real quickly, if they came in and said, hey, we don't want you all to move, we're going to renovate NRG Stadium, we're going to give you a little bit more control over the calendar, and we're going to tear down everything around it so you all can build an entertainment park around NRG, do you think that would keep the McNairs at NRG Stadium?
Man, yes, it would, Sarge. Like the quick answer to that is absolutely yes. Okay. The complicated answer is they ain't got the money to do that. Government, being you both know plenty about government, and government barely got enough money to do stuff they supposed to do.
Hey, if they put it to vote and to see if they could get the money from the city, I'm pretty sure that there will be a majority that will overwhelmingly vote for them to tear down the Astrodome.
Yes.
For them to rebuild around NRG, make it more attractive. Listen. Promise me, John, the fans, the viewers, and the listeners that you will come back on so we could discuss this.
Yes. This is one thing that is a constant topic and affects even more people than just football fans. This is like the Houstonians, people of the city, exactly. And people are just intrigued by how big businesses like sports teams and corporations interact with government and with the citizens and the people that pay the tickets and all of that. Man, it's actually pretty fascinating stuff.
So the more we find out about this, the more that we move on and find out about this, when we have you back on, we're gonna definitely have to deep dive this. We'll put it in the B block. Listen, thank you all for listening to the Locked On Texans podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment on our YouTube page and as well as our X page. I almost said, follow us on X and on YouTube. B, tell them where they can find you.
Man, make sure y'all check out the B Block podcast twice a week, doing our thing over there, and then also on X at Brandon K. Scott. And then on Instagram at B Sky from Hiram Clark. Clark has an E at the end. If you're from Houston, you know that. And get with me.
And make sure you follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter, Big Star Sports with the Z at the end. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.